Okay, hello and welcome to my video podcast, which is also my project for a course named Political Psychology in International Relations. Today, I'm going to interview a psychologist, Jan Šerek from Masaryk University in Brno. Mr. Šerek is dedicated to political and social psychology, and we are going to discuss a national and European identity formation, which I personally consider a very interesting topic and also a significant part of both national and European history. Mr. Šerek is an expert also because he conducted a cross-national study about this identity development, which I'm going to ask him about later in the interview. There are several psychological aspects that can influence the formation of any kind of social identity, which explain why it is natural for humans. The family, peer groups, and community play a crucial role in shaping an individual's sense of identity, including their national one. Early socialization experiences, culture norms, and values transmitted within these groups can have a lasting impact on how individuals perceive and identify with their nation. Another influence are emotions and cognitive processes. As we get attached to our nations, feelings such as pride, loyalty, or even patriotism can strengthen national identity. Cognitive processes like categorization and social identification also play a role as individuals categorize themselves as members of a particular nations and identify with the shared characteristics and values associated with a nation. The collective memory of a nation, including its historical narratives and interpretations of past events, can also have an impact on identity development. The way history is taught, the emphasis placed on certain events, and the collective understanding of the nation's past can shape individuals' perceptions of their national identity. This development also depends on many other factors such as media and communication and other political and societal factors. It definitely plays a major role in the field of international relations. A nation's identity influences how it perceives itself and its position in the world. It shapes the nation's values, aspirations, and interests, which in turn inform its foreign policy, priorities, and objectives. It basically provides a framework for decision-making, guiding a country's stance on various international issues. Societal identity can affect a country's willingness to engage in international cooperation and diplomacy. It can influence the level of trust and alignment with other nations that share similar values or even historical ties. It can also influence a nation's approach to multilateral institutions and regional organizations. European identity also plays a significant role in international relations, particularly within the context of the European Union and its member states. It has been a driving force behind the process of European integration. The shared sense of belonging and common values among European nations has fostered cooperation in various areas, including trade, security, human rights, and environmental issues. This provides a basis for collaboration and collective decision-making within the European Union framework. European identity is closely linked to the aspiration of maintaining peace and stability on the European continent. It also has implications for the global engagement of the EU and its member states. It influences their approach to international affairs, cooperation with other regions, and participations in global initiatives. Nevertheless, European identity is intertwined with economic integration and the pursuit of shared prosperity. The European single market and the Eurozone are examples of economic integration driven by same needs and values. The European Union's economic influence and the stability provided by the euro contribute to its standing in international economic relations. Now I'm going to ask Mr. Šerek to tell us more about the whole national and European identity formation. Mhm. Okay, so thank you so much for taking a time to talk to me and to discuss this topic of national and European identity formation. Maybe can you introduce yourself a bit? Tell us what are you working on?
Okay, so my name is Jan Šerek. I'm associate professor at the Faculty of Social Studies at Masaryk University in Brno. My background is mainly in political and social psychology, and I'm teaching these subjects as well as philosophy of psychology and youth development and other classes. And my research mainly focuses on civic and political socialization in adolescence. And I focus on the development of trust in authorities, intergroup attitudes, civic participation, and related topics.
Okay, thank you. So moving out to our topic, can you define the terms of national identity and European identity and maybe explain how do they differ from each other?
Mm. So, in general, identity is understood as part of our self-definition. So, if I have some type of or some kind of identity, it means that I define myself in a certain way. And psychology typically differentiates between two types of identity, or maybe two aspects of identity, which is maybe better word for it. And one of them is called as personal, and the other as social. And social identity, personal identity is about how do I perceive myself in terms of uniqueness. So it's basically my answer to the question, like what makes me special, or how am I unique compared to other people. Well, and the other aspect is social identity, and it's typically the answer to the question, like to what groups do I belong. So it might be my identity as a member of a certain group, like a family or school class, or maybe professional group, but also this might refer to membership in nation, or maybe some bigger entities such as Europe or European Union. So from this perspective, national identity is self-definition in terms of national group, in terms of nation. And European identity is other type of identity related to something bigger, to whole Europe. And so it means actually that national identity can be understood as a lower level identity, and European identity is some superordinate identity, to use like terms from social identity theory.
Okay, so in your view, what are the main psychological aspects that affect these formations?
Well, like there are many of them, and I think it's good to like differentiate between two ways in which identity like can be important for us. And the first is let's say more stable or more dispositional, and it means that as individuals we differ in like how important, for example, national identity is for us. So, and this is something which is typically developed like from childhood, based on like different experiences you can have. It's very strongly affected by socialization, by how your parents, your friends, how media, for example, talk about what does it mean to be like Czech or Slovak or something. And so this is the first view. And like there are many studies showing that during childhood, the importance of national identity increases. So if you compare like a child aged 5, for example, with adolescent aged 14, you can typically observe that like the relevance or importance of national identity goes up. So this is the first aspect. And the second aspect is more situational, because I think we can say that almost everyone understands what does national identity mean, and we are, so to say, like prepared to use it in certain situations. And from this perspective, it matters on the situation, and there are some situations which like make this type of identity relevant for us. But in other types of situations, we just don't care. Like, for example, if you, I don't know, if you live in your country, in your like home country, it might happen that your identity is not important to you, because like everyone around you has the same identity, and it's not a topic, or it's not a matter of discussion. But when you like move abroad, or I don't know, you go for Erasmus or something, after that, in this situation, like your national identity can become very important for you, because it makes you unique or special, and you need to like negotiate with other people, and you start the process of comparing like, what does it mean to be Czech, and what does it mean to be I don't know, American, and French, etc., etc.
Okay, so do you think that some factors like language and culture history can also affect this process of making an identity?
Definitely, and I would also say that like it's not only that in specific cultures like national identity or European identity is more important or more relevant to people, but it's also about the fact that the culture like affects what's the content of your identity, like because if you have like national identity, it has two aspects actually. One of them is how strong is your identity, so how strongly are you identified with your nation. But the other question is, what does it mean to you? Like, what's the content of the identity? What norms of behavior, what values or beliefs are associated with being the member of this group? So, and that's why it's like people, for example, often ask like whether it is like good or bad to have like a strong national identity.
Yeah, that was my next question.
Yeah. Yeah, but the answer is actually it depends. It depends on the content of the identity, because like if you have like identity which is very like focused on the uniqueness of my nation, for example, which is intolerant, then of course like having strong national identity means you are like intolerant person, and you don't like people from like other nationalities. But on the other hand, if the core value of your national identity is tolerance or humanity or respect to different people, then like having a strong national identity has exactly the opposite consequences, because it makes you more tolerant.
Okay, so when we focus more on the European identity, on the societal level, what are the potential benefits and drawbacks?
Well, I would say the benefit is quite obvious, because since it is like large identity covering like all European countries, like having a strong European identity should mean that you are more identified not only with like people from your country, but also from other European countries. And like from psychology, we know that shared identity means that you are like more willing to help other people. It means that you have strong empathy to the feelings of other people. And of course, like a bigger or larger your identity is, like more people you yeah, you are more open and more tolerant to a greater number of people. And of course, like identity is associated with civic participation. So, for example, if you're thinking about the question or the issue that there are like many topics that need like collective action of the whole Europe, such as climate crisis, maybe war, like in Ukraine or elsewhere. And we are thinking about the need to act collectively as Europe. Then like having shared European identity is of course a very strong benefit, right? Which can like help to mobilize people and so on and so on. So this is the benefit. But of course, there are some also some drawbacks or maybe like negative aspects. And one of them is that people sometimes do not like to have too broad identities, right? And there's actually one theory in social psychology, which is called optimum distinctiveness theory, and this theory suggests that actually that people have two main motivations. One of them is motivation for belonging or needs to belong somewhere. But the opposite motivation or need is a need to be unique. And these like large identities are very good for satisfying the need to belong, but they somehow threaten the sense of uniqueness. And so that's why people sometimes like react negatively to those identities. And I think this is something we can observe like in practice in this anti-EU or anti-Europe movement. And I would say that psychologically, one of the key motivations of these movements is that like people feel that they are losing their uniqueness, something which makes them special, like compared to other people in Europe. So that's why, when introducing like European identity, it's very important to keep the balance between like having something really encompassing, but at the same time, like people must be assured that it doesn't mean that they are losing like their national like heritage or culture or whatever they like feel as important to them.
Do you think that other like big players in the world politics as China, USA, I don't know, can perceive Europe acting like superior because of that national and European identity? Is there any case, maybe?
Yeah. Well, it's a question, of course. I actually I'm not a scholar in international politics, so it's just a rather lay perspective. But I would say that like other big countries in the world, like China or maybe US, I would say that sometimes I would like to see the Europe like more divided because I think they can see that. To get organized and to act as one actor, there must be some sense of European identity, and so that's why I think it's if Europe actually wants to be a partner of those big players, something like European identity must exist. But of course, I think the question is more about how Europe like itself should like communicate this identity like to the citizens, because as I said, it can be quite delicate issue for them.
Okay, so in our contemporary world, how do you think that political and cultural factors such as media coverage or like political events in general can influence the development of these identities?
I would say yes, they can, yeah, it's actually very important. For example, like what is the context in which like media put events that are happening around the world, and I would say more often like media frame the issues as European issues or like the problems of European countries as the problems of whole Europe. More likely European identity will be developed. So yes, I think it matters, and well, maybe it's not. Maybe this is not nice, but very strong factor like affecting the development or maybe the strength of identity is having some competitor, like some other party which is perceived as enemy, but not necessarily enemy, but yeah, as competitor. So like I would say stressing the difference and the competition between Europe and China and Europe and US and Europe and India and so on and so on could help to feel that yeah, we belong to each other.
Okay, is there any way how do national and European identities interact with other social identities such as ethnicity, gender, or religion? Maybe.
Well, yeah, surely they do, and but I would say there's no like general like way in which this happens, and it can be very context specific. And once again, it's very closely related to the content of the identities. Like there are some national identities which are like closely related to religion. Like if you look at, for example, Northern Ireland, like the conflict between Protestants and Catholics, like here you can observe very close connection between national and religious identities, for example. But on the other hand, like if you look at I don't know, Czech Republic, maybe like this connection is very weak, and I would say religious values or a religion is not like essential component of Czech identity. So yeah, they can be related, but I would say it's really contextually dependent.
How do globalization and increasing multiculturalism affect maybe more than a development, the maintenance of the identities, and how can societies adapt to these changes?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Once again, this is a quite complicated issue, and I would say what I said before about European identity can be applied to some global identity or maybe multiculturalism and or unrelated identities, because this is something which has a potential to calm down like conflicts between national groups or ethnic groups or other types of groups, but at the same time it brings some sense of being threatened to many people. So like for example, some scholars in social psychology suggest that it is essential to create something which is called as dual identities, which means that you have like both types of identity at the same time. So, for example, your ethnic or national identity, but also some superordinate identity, which can be global identity, which can be European identity. And if countries or politicians are successful in communicating those identities to people, then maybe some global identity is possible.
I think we can move to your study. Can you introduce it a bit maybe and tell us what inspired you to research this topic?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, in this study, the main idea was to combine like two big theories of identity. Well, one of them is social identity theory. This is something, or it's one of the leading theories in social psychology. And yeah, the main idea is actually that we have different types of social identities, and those identities like are ordered in a certain hierarchy. So, for example, as I said, you have national identity, and then you have some superordinate European identity. And so this is the first theory. And the second theory is quite different because it comes from developmental psychology, and it's related rather to the question like how people from like late childhood or early adolescence like create their own personal identity. And well, this theory, it was coined by Erik Erikson in 1950s, actually, and then elaborated by other authors. But basically, it suggests that like there are two main dimensions of identity development. One of them is called exploration. Like to have some identity, you must first explore the issue. So, for example, if you want to create a European identity, you start by asking, like, what does it mean to be European? What are the European values? Etc., etc. And after exploration, then comes the second dimension, which is called commitment. So you decide to commit yourself to this specific identity. And so yeah, so these are these are two approaches we try to combine. And I would say our study is one of the first which uses like this approach, these dimensions of exploration and commitment to national and mainly to European identity.
So how exactly was the study conducted?
Yeah, it was actually not that complicated, because it's based on a questionnaire-based survey. And actually the data was collected as a part of a bigger project in which we were involved from 2015 to 2018. It was the EU-funded project on youth active citizenship, and we collected like different types of data in many countries. And among them, one type of data was a survey among young people aged 16 to 26, and we did this data collection in 2016, and then 1 year later we approached the same people with the same questionnaire, like to see what has changed or what has remained the same. And for this study, we took the data from the Czech Republic and Germany, and we actually analyzed like how people answered like different scales measuring identity, and how those answers changed over 1 year.
And what are your key findings from your study?
Well, I would say it's not that surprising, but well, one finding was that it's actually possible to apply this developmental approach to national and European identity, because like we were able to identify the same configurations of identity like as in previous studies, which focused on different types of identities. So we actually found like 4 types of young people with respect to their identity. Like one of them is typically called as people who are in diffusion, which means they are not interested, and they do not explore, and they do not take any commitments. So those people don't care about Europe or nation. So this is the first type. The second type, those people are called as people in a so-called moratorium, according to the theory. And it refers to those people who are in the process of active exploration. So they are like collecting information, they are thinking about like national identities and European identities, but they haven't taken any commitments yet. So they are still searching. The third type, it's called as foreclosure, or maybe early closure. Those people have commitments. They are committed to like certain types of identities, but they didn't explore much before they committed themselves. And like this is typically associated with being a little bit conservative, or maybe like accepting the views of your parents without like thinking much about this. And finally, the final type are people who have so-called achieved identity, which means they explored actively. And after that, they decided and they committed to something. So, and we were able to find like those 4 types, like both for European and national identity, but also both in Czech Republic and Germany, which is, I would say, quite strong finding, suggesting that like those processes are quite universal. So I would say this is the Sorry.
Sorry, continue. I'm sorry.
Maybe I'm yeah, talking too much, but
No,
this is just
no,
this is, this is just first finding. And the second finding was if you looked at the changes, like changes over this 1 year period, we found those like identifications to be quite stable, which means that at least over 1 year, people do not change much in terms of national and European identity. And the last finding was that there was certain level of congruency or similarity between how people like developed national and European identity. So, for example, if somebody had I don't know, achieved identity in terms of nation, so national identity, the person was more likely to have achieved identity also in the domain of Europe. So it seems that people are developing both types of identities like simultaneously as a part of one bigger process.
So you didn't find any evidence of like cross-national differences, like between.
There were some, and one of them is that like this congruence between European and national identity was stronger in Germany compared to Czech Republic. Like it seems that it's it's actually a little bit in opposite to what I just said, but like this simultaneous process is more pronounced in Germany, and it's actually less evident in the Czech Republic. And we have actually like certain explanation for this, because one of our previous studies showed that like the association or the correlation between national and European identity is stronger like in Germany, or in general in Western maybe wealthier countries compared to countries such as Czech Republic, which means post-communist, less wealthy, and less equal countries.
Okay, so maybe history and like culture in general plays this like significant role.
Yeah. I would say so. I would say that like yeah, like because of the history of the Czech Republic, maybe because of the period of communism, the association between like feeling as a European and feeling as Czech, for example, is weaker compared to the association between feeling German or French and feeling European.
Do you think that policymakers and leaders can like use this sense of shared identity and social cohesion across different national European groups, and maybe can just use it? Do you consider it important?
Yeah, I think it's actually important, but of course, like from this type of research, or the way from this type of research to like actual policies is quite long. So it's not that straightforward. But at least I would say the finding that European countries might differ in the way in which European identity is associated with national identity, like can be like important input, like suggesting that maybe there's no like universal policy that could be applied like to all European countries. And it's very important to pay attention to like how exactly in the specific country the European identity is related to national identity, and also what is the content of national identity. And this might differ quite considerably across Europe.
Okay. Are there any areas for future research on this type of topic in the both national and European domains?
Yeah, I would say yes, and well, for example, if I think about the limitations of our study, one of them is that like we like implicitly assumed that people who like feel a strong sense of identity, like either national or European, feel this identity in a positive way. And we didn't consider negative identities, because it's actually possible that you might feel as Czech, but it doesn't bring you any positive images or feelings, and it's a rather negative identity. So this might be something to consider in other studies, and also having data just from Czech Republic and Germany is this is quite limited sample, right? So it would be really interesting to look at other contexts, like UK, for example, might be great example of very complicated relation between European and national identity. The same, I will say, applies to some southern countries such as Greece, and if you look at Nordic countries, this might be even it might be also very very different.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think we've managed to cover this topic pretty well. Do you have anything else you would like to mention that I probably didn't ask, or some important
Yeah,
fact?
maybe maybe one interesting fact, and it's actually shown by this study only implicitly, but we focused on this issue in one previous study, and it is that there's actually a positive correlation between national and European identity, at least among young people, and I would say this is this goes a little bit against some intuitions we can have, because if you look at practical politics, you might have the impression that you are either a nationalist or somebody supporting European idea or European Union and so on. But I would say this is just something which is present in political discourse, maybe, or maybe among political elites, but on the level of ordinary people, there's a rather positive correlation. So it means more strongly you identify with your nation, more strongly you identify also with Europe, and which this is something which was quite surprising for me. But if you analyze the data from young people from the whole Europe, this was very common pattern. So it's yeah. So maybe this is good to stress, because it suggests that there's no inevitable opposition or tension between national and European identity.
Okay, thank you so much. This was very insightful, I would say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. In the interview with Mr. Šerek, we learned that identity formation is a natural process in society, which importance increases during childhood. And what surprised me was that it is very common to develop your national identity after you move abroad, even though it probably didn't really matter before, as people are trying to identify themselves somehow. We discussed culture as a significant aspect and some potential benefits and drawbacks of having a strong national identity, which of course depends on what are the particular nation's values. That also relates to the way how national identities interact with other identities, such as religion or ethnicity, which can vary from case to case. Within the context of Europe, we are observing shared identity as a huge advantage because people are more willing to help each other and tolerate each other. On the other hand, even though people have a strong desire to belong somewhere, they also kind of want to be unique. And in this case, they may consider European identity as a bit of disadvantage, as it doesn't make them so special. That's why it is important to find some kind of balance for every individual. We discussed that in the field of international relations, something like European identity must exist in order to get organized and act as a one actor, and in order to be a partner to other big players such as China or the United States. According to Mr. Šerek, social psychologists suggest that in a contemporary world where globalization and multiculturalism became a significant part of our lives, can be found cases of clashes of different kind of identities, but also cases of developing something as a dual identity when people also accept a subordinated identity such as global or European one. We also discussed Mr. Sherek's cross-country study where he, with his colleagues, collected data from both Czech and German teenagers and young adults to examine how is their national and European identity developed and shaped. We talked about how the findings were basically universal, which in my opinion can be because those two countries are neighbors and have shared history. And we talk about that it would be great to conduct a study on more different European countries and on more age groups maybe. I think that the interview was very insightful, and I thank Mr. Šerek, and I thank you for watching and listening it. Goodbye.